Do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. Brothers and sisters, we do not want you to be uninformed about those who sleep in death, so that you do not grieve like the rest of mankind who have no hope. For we believe that Jesus died and rose again, and so we believe that God will bring with Jesus those who have fallen asleep in him. According to the Lord's word, we tell you that we who are still alive, who are left until the coming of the Lord, will certainly not perceive those who have fallen asleep. For the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a loud command, with the voice of the archangels, and with the trumpet call of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. After that, we who are still alive and are left will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so we will be with the Lord forever. Therefore, encourage one another with these words. Thank you for joining us, Pearls with Veronica. Thank you for tuning us on Tuesday night at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Join us and share the file. I'm Jerry Rose Live Worldwide, and welcome to Positive Power, double XL Christian Media.
Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to episode 21 of Pearls with Veronica, a show designed for those who have lost loved ones, where we are very transparent about the loss of a loved one, the pain and grief of that loss, and any adversity that life happens to swing our way. This platform allows us to tell our listening audience about how we are living forward. I'd like to thank Jerry Royce and Positive Power Double XI Christian Media family for this platform. Tonight's topic is diabetes. While genetic predisposition is a huge risk factor for diabetes, all ethnic groups have been hit hard by the rising obesity rate. Many groups are also living in neighborhoods that are so-called food deserts, where supermarkets are not that close by and access to healthy food is very limited. Even though there is no cure for diabetes, diabetes can be treated and controlled. My guest tonight was diagnosed 18 years ago with brittle type 1 diabetes. While maintaining her A1C at 7.1% for the last 3 years, my guest has, in this time, graduated in the year of 2016 with an associate degree in science, and she's graduated and also graduated in 2019 with a degree in health administration. Help me welcome Alexis Gray, the founder of the Diabetic Elite. Good evening, Alexis.
Hey, everybody. It's nice to be here.
How are you this evening?
I'm doing pretty good. There are a few things on there, though, that I just wanted to update. That probably was my fault. But actually have been diagnosed as a diabetic for 20 years now. And,
20 years, okay.
Yeah, there was one more thing, but I can't remember what it was. It'll probably come to me later. But, yeah, it was a very awesome welcome, and I'm super excited to be here. I can't wait.
Thank you. Thank you for accepting the invitation. Please tell us more about you, and then tell us about how you were diagnosed. I believe it was brittle. Is it brittle type 1?
Brittle type 1, yes.
Brittle type 1 diabetes.
Yes. Well, I was diagnosed at age 5. I'm actually 25 on April 27th. So there's that. Almost 2 decades now. And when I was diagnosed, I don't really know exactly how that went down. I know that I was 5, and I've heard several different stories about that. But the general thing that I keep hearing over and over is that we were in a grocery store, and I was having an episode, making a mess. My mom took me to the hospital, and within a few days, I did get the proper diagnosis of brittle type 1. Now, there's a lot of people who are misdiagnosed at first, but that wasn't the case with me. I actually had the right diagnosis right away. So that's how that went. I spent a couple of days in a hospital that was very well, very well staffed. It was full of women. I don't remember seeing very many male nurses back then, but then again, that was 2 decades ago. So that's probably not shocking.
Right.
They were all super, super friendly. No one was judgmental. They made me feel right at home. They had a huge playroom, as a matter of fact. And I remember getting my little cart that had my IV line on it, and I just had to roll it around into the playroom, and I played with a bunch of other little kids, too. It was so much fun.
So explain brittle type 1 diabetes. What is it?
Okay. So there's different types of diabetes, but type 1 is an autoimmune disease for the most part. Some people do get it without having their immune systems attack any part of them. Basically, I was diagnosed with type 1 where my immune system did attack my pancreas, and what it killed off was something called beta cells. There are two major cells that most people know about, alpha and beta. Beta cells are responsible for making insulin for your body. So when those got killed off, I officially didn't have any more, and that's the kind of diabetes that I have. I'm brittle, which means that my blood sugar levels fluctuate frequently. I can't remember the exact numbers for someone who lives without diabetes, but I believe it's somewhere between 80 and 110 or 120. They fluctuate between those two numbers all the time. Somebody who does not have the control that they have with beta cells, I'm frequently going different levels. That's what brittle means. Now, when I was really small, I could go from 230, for example, all the way down to 60 in a very small time span, somewhere within 10 to 20 minutes. It could be really bad. Now, over the years, I've learned to control it, so I don't have that problem anymore, but that's what brittle means. Unlike most people, we just fluctuate between lows and highs, and we switch between those numbers very, very fast.
So brittle type 1 diabetes, it attacks the immune system.
Well, your immune system actually attacks the pancreas, so that's what that is.
Attacks. Okay. And so what I'm thinking, because my husband had stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and I know I looked at him. He was pricking his finger, and he said, "Well, the doctor says I'm borderline diabetic." I'm like, "Okay, either you are or you aren't, because you can't be borderline." In my opinion, you aren't borderline. Either you are or you aren't. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, that kind of makes sense, because if you are diabetic, you are, and if you aren't, you aren't. But in his case, the pancreas, again, is where those beta cells and those alpha cells are. So his disease was actually affecting those things. So it makes sense that he was almost into the realm of having diabetes, but he probably just wasn't it yet. So a normal person who is without diabetes, they can have let's just put it this way, A1C. An A1C for a person living without diabetes, is 5%. You are borderline diabetic, or you're pre-diabetic, as they call it now, if you're 5.6 or above. Now, anyone who's diabetic can have much higher numbers than that. Somebody can be 12, somebody can be 7. Oh, that was the other thing I wanted to tell you about. Actually, I've been 6.5 now for several months. That was what I wanted to say. So, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Now I'm going right on down. Before more education. Yeah, you're fine. Before more education came along, most people thought that 7% was good for diabetics. We couldn't get anywhere near a 5. But now what science is coming to understand is that you can be even lower than that. A diabetic can live at a 5% A1C, and it doesn't mean that they're doing something dangerous. They can actually get down there and be quite healthy. So now I'm even lower, and I'm getting probably even lower as we speak with the control that I have. But that's what that means. You can be pre-diabetic if you're 5.6, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have full-blown diabetes. If you control in certain instances, if you control your lifestyle choices, if you work out, if you eat right, you can keep yourself from being diagnosed as an actual type 2 or type 1, whatever the case may be. But that's what prediabetes is. Like, you're not at the actual A1C where someone should be that doesn't have diabetes.
Right.
But you are pretty close to getting to a really high A1C, which would probably be, I'm not entirely sure where they diagnosed you with diabetes at that point. I just know I've had it for a while. So 5.6 is pre-diabetic, though.
Okay. I know in reading about diabetes, I know a lot of times they attribute it to Okay, you're African American, which I really disagree with that. That's my opinion. I just disagree with it by me being African American, that I'm just prone to all of these things that you say that I'm predisposed to. It's the obesity, the environment you're living in, not enough exercise. Dispel some of those things to me and give me some truths on these things that you've experienced with your diabetes.
Well, I've also got some medical background, so I might not have like an actual license, but I've helped out in the healthcare field, and I've interned under actual diabetes specialists. So I can say for a fact, being African American it predisposes us to having many things that maybe Caucasians won't have, and it's just in our genetics. It doesn't have really anything to do with race. It's just the way that we're born. We're predisposed to a lot of stuff. Unfortunately, that's what it is. But you can have like a high predisposition to diabetes without being African American. Like you said, obesity does play some roles in certain other types. Like type 2, a lot of people thought in the past where if you were just overweight, you're going to get diabetes, but that's not true either. There's also genetics that play a role in that. For type 2 diabetics, the biggest thing between type 1 and type 2s is that type 2s actually do have beta cells. They're just overworked, and they're not being able to do their job the way that they should be able to do it. A type 1 has none at all. That's the biggest difference.
Okay. So type 2 have overworked beta cells.
Yes.
I'm taking notes. Okay. And type 1, their beta cells are underworked.
No, they don't have any
at all.
They're gone.
Oh, they don't have any.
Gone.
Okay. No beta cells. Okay. Okay. I'm learning something tonight. I hope my listening audience is as well. How has this affected, you say you were diagnosed at 5. So how did it affect you for as extracurricular activities, maintaining your diet, not even eating certain foods? Tell me a little more about that.
Well, I have parents who are really overprotective, and I won't go into that too much, but what we learn now is science has progressed in 20 years. What they used to tell us back then is that sugar is not something that diabetics could have. Carbs are bad, try to avoid them as much as possible. So they got strict on my diet with that kind of thing. And as a result, when I got older and I got into working and when I went to school, I would do anything I can to get some sugar because, as it turns out, science has proven that kids growing up, they actually do need sugar. So that's one thing that was actually proven later on in life. So that was actually bad advice that we were given, but people just didn't know that back then. So all the strictness on me when I was a kid just trying to grow up, that did not do well for me in diet. As a matter of fact, for the first major, I wouldn't say half, but almost half of my journey, I really didn't care. I would just eat whatever I wanted, did whatever I wanted, waste a lot of time. But now, as time went by, as I got older, I was able to actually participate in extracurricular activities. I just had to watch myself. It wasn't like, for me at least, it wasn't a disability. Now, for each person, it is different. Diabetes affects different people in different ways. There are some people who cannot participate in extracurricular activities, and for the most part, there's some stuff that really isn't some people's fault. Like, it's not because they didn't eat well or they didn't work out. It's just depending on their condition and their body, how it handles it, certain things happen to them. But for the most part, if you do take care of yourself, you can do a lot of those things. I was a cheerleader in 8th grade, for Pete's sake, and I did a really good job. So extracurricular activities were never a problem, really. The diet was an issue, though, because of the environment that I was in. But as I got older and I realized that I was just kind of wasting a lot of time away, and it eventually crushed down on me mentally. Like, I was just sitting on my bed one day, and I used to do a lot of things back then that wasted a lot of time. The 3 biggest things I loved to do was play video games, watch TV, listen to music. I remember sitting on my bed, and I was just watching TV one day, and I didn't want to do any of those things, but those were like my only 3 choices. So as I thought about that, it kind of just crushed down on me, the weight on my shoulders. I was breathing pretty fast, heart was racing. I just felt terrible. So I finally just got up out of the bed, and I was like, I have got to do something because clearly those 2 things are not doing it for me anymore. Let me make some kind of decision. Right. That was when I decided to start actually paying attention to my grades. I was like, well, school exists. Maybe I should do something about it, because before that point in time, I had gotten straight A's and B's without trying. But I was like, what if I really tried? Got straight A's. So I got my parents in on that. I would get a bunch of rewards, et cetera. So I had my motivation, and I worked really, really hard. And while I did not hit straight A's that particular semester, I remember working so hard and getting almost straight A's. There was one teacher who made it really, really hard. There's always that one teacher.
It's
but
always
I remember trying so hard.
Always that one.
Yep. And I just remember doing a really good job and enjoying every moment of putting myself into something. So that next semester that came along, I was able to work something out with that teacher where I could just work really hard, do the extra work, and I did get straight A's the second time. And that's what kind of got me on that high of just working really hard towards something. And I started paying attention in school. Recently got to college. I started learning how to look up my own peer-reviewed studies and answer my own questions about diabetes. So it became a lot more self-knowledge because in the beginning, when my mom, who took really good care of me, did her best to learn everything, I wasn't really paying attention because I didn't care. But as I got older and I learned how to do this stuff myself, I started paying attention, asking questions. We got into the medical field. I started going into hospitals and seeing the differences between what could happen to somebody with diabetes who didn't take care of themselves versus someone who didn't. And that's kind of where my passion kind of started growing. The biggest thing I noticed in all of these places is that the people who were doing well were people who had a very positive mindset. They weren't thinking, oh, I'm going to be crippled when I get older, diabetes is a disability, all this stuff. Those were the people who were in the hospital beds because they just didn't care, like me in the beginning. And I was thinking to myself, that is where I could have ended up. But all the people who are getting the right kind of care, not just getting information, learning about complications, but they were being treated as people, being encouraged in the right ways. They learned to fight and they learned to enjoy fighting and just enjoy living. Those are the people that I see. For example, my primary, whose name I won't reveal because I didn't ask his permission for that, but my primary, he is a 70-year-old man. He's also been diagnosed with diabetes type 1. I don't know if he's brittle or not. Type 1 at 6. He's 70. There is no complications on that man whatsoever. He doesn't even wear glasses, and he has the exact same system as I do. People like that came from people who helped them get the right mindset in the beginning. And so that's what kind of woke me up to do what I do now. And I feel like I'm ranting into the phone here. I'm very sorry. But,
that's okay.
What has really gotten me to do is realize that mindset was the thing that changed my life all those years back when I was just sitting on my bed, and this changed several other lives as well. So that is why I became a diabetes life coach. And so that's what I do now, is teach people how to not end up in the hospitals like I saw all the other people doing, because I could have been there too, but to do the other thing and go the other way and learn to live life and to love living it. So that's where I am.
So have you established a foundation or anything, or you just do the diabetes coaching?
For the most part, I did create my own company. It's not necessarily huge yet, but I call it the Diabetic Elite. And for the most part, I do coaching personally. I like the one-on-one coaching scene. So I love to actually help people one-on-one. And the biggest place to do that right now is actually on Facebook. So if people were to look me up after this, let's just say look up Alexis Gray Diabetes Facebook. You type those 4 words in, you'll probably see everything I've ever done, including all the posts I've ever made, even a podcast I used to have in the old a long time ago that I kind of left alone, but I left it up because it shows a little bit about how I speak. Like this entire time I've been speaking, you can probably hear the passion in my voice and the conviction in it. That's exactly what that podcast tells you about as well. I used to get on that thing every day, and I would just go into the phone or go into the the mic about like different things that would teach people different things that could help them with their diabetes. A lot of people don't get the right information right away. Some doctors will not give all the information that's needed, or they'll say something, and I've heard these horror stories before a million times. I still hear them today. Somebody's diagnosed with diabetes, the doctor's like, all right, here's some insulin or metformin, good luck, you're diabetic, and that's it. There's no information whatsoever. So one of the things I have on my Facebook is actually a free book that I wrote called The Diabetic Diet that gives all that information that doctors should be teaching, but don't when someone's first diagnosed, if they don't refer them to a diabetes educator. How to count carbs, what the food groups are, different sugars to watch out for and avoid, those kind of things. So I just love to help wherever I can. And being a coach, it's one of the most rewarding things ever because I can help people get to that point where they don't have to be in the hospital, but they are instead out there living their life and not afraid. They're not burning out all the time from some of the exhaustion that diabetes can cause because they're not thinking, I'm going to let that happen to me. They're thinking, I'm going to live and I'm going to enjoy my life.
Wow, that's wonderful. That he's been able to, cross those hurdles, and live a healthy lifestyle, as best as possible, and that you've gotten to a place where you got your 2 degrees, and I applaud you on that. You didn't let the diabetes stop you, from excelling And I was going to ask you about, did diabetes affect you in your schoolwork in your elementary years? But you answered that question for me. You mentioned that, so I didn't have to ask you that.
Well, in the elementary years, yeah, because before I kind of woke up that day, but as I got older, got into college, I've never used diabetes as an excuse, and I don't think anybody really should. It's just another thing in life we have to deal with. It's just like any other condition that anyone can have or any other problem that someone can have. While this one is a lifelong one, if you're paying attention to it and taking care of it the way that you're supposed to, it shouldn't be an excuse. There are things that pop up that you can't control. You might have a low and you might have to pull over on the side of the road and eat something, but that's not an excuse for things later. Like if you had that one low and you can get to work on time without speeding, then you shouldn't, you shouldn't go goof off and then use diabetes as an excuse later if you're an hour late. Oh, well, I had a low on the road. No, okay, it's not an excuse. It's a life change that you have to deal with as it comes. But don't let it hold you back, because a lot of people I know don't do that. But there's also a lot of people I know that do. But it's a choice. You don't always have to let that be the case. Some things will pop up that you can't control. There are days where diabetes is just diabetes. Doesn't matter if you do everything right or not. It'll just be diabetes. But you shouldn't let it hold you back, and it really shouldn't be an excuse. Like anything else.
So you mentioned low. You mentioned low. What is low? Explain it to me.
Okay. Do you remember when I said at the beginning that somebody with a pancreas that has regular working beta cells, they're normally bouncing between 80 and 120? Those are the numbers that if you took their blood sugar, that's what you would see.
Okay.
Yeah. If they're below 80, that would be a low. But whoever is low, when you start having symptoms of being low is different. There was one girl in my class, actually in college, who skipped breakfast one day, and we were actually testing blood sugars. She passed out while she was taking her blood sugar, and she was like 42. That's what happens when you don't eat for somebody with a functioning pancreas. Well, imagine us, even if we do eat, we might still have a low later if we've taken too much insulin. We'll be the ones passing out or being a little freaky or super weak. Or if we eat too much, we shoot over that 120. We could be really, really high if we didn't take care of ourselves. Perhaps we had just too many carbs. We didn't take enough insulin. We didn't work out or anything, so we're sitting now at 200. That's a really high blood sugar, and a person is very irritable. So a lot of the time when they're high, or it just depends. Each person is different. Symptoms are different. But me, I would probably be really jittery and really irritable. So my emotions can change as well at the same time.
So it does affect your the mental and your emotional. Whether you,
yes, it
especially
does.
if you're high. High makes you irritable. Okay. That's what I'm thinking.
Each person is different. It doesn't have to mean
it
doesn't mean that they have to be really, really irritable. For example, somebody might be tired just because they have so much sugar in their blood and their body doesn't know what to do with it. They might be sleepy, for example.
Okay.
Could just sweat a lot. Might not be any difference of that at all.
Oh, okay. Okay. In your studies and being in the hospitals and working in the hospitals and being up under the different doctors and learning, how can we as African Americans do a better job, so to speak, of maintaining our A1C?
Now that just depends on how far you're wanting to go. One of my most favorite things to tell people when it comes to stuff like this is that I could find the cure for diabetes. Let's just pretend that I did. And I found it was a little pill that I created, and it would get rid of diabetes. I found the most miserable person on earth with diabetes, and I just gave them the pill, and I was like, here, if you take this, it will go away. That person, I can guarantee you 100%, is going to find some kind of way to make sure that they don't take it. They're going to say, oh, well, it's already ruined enough in my life. It's pointless. I'm not going to take it now. It's too late. Or they're going to be, you're suspicious. I can see all your credentials and studies and things, but I'm still not going to take it because I'm just being suspicious. They're going to be stubborn. They're not going to care very much. The answer to that question, the reason I brought that up is because if the person does not have the right mindset when I answer that question, then maybe somebody does want to get their A1C down, but if they don't have the right mindset, they don't really care to do the work. They're just saying it. They're not really putting themselves into it. I can give you all the information in the world, but it's not going to matter. What's most important to being healthy in general, A1Cs, living a long, healthy life with diabetes, Crohn's disease, or just a normal person that doesn't have anything going on with them, to be healthy in general, you need to have the right mindset. So number one, you look into yourself and figure out what it is exactly that you want, and figure out what kind of decision you're going to make there. Where do you really want to go? Make it specified, and then start planning your steps. So once you've decided, yes, I do want to live a long and healthy life with diabetes, I do believe it's possible, I know I can do it, then you can start looking at things like diet. Whereas I would honestly say exercise is extremely important. Exercise saves off a lot of stuff. For example, there was a study in one of my textbooks. I can't remember exactly where I saw this one, but there was a study about two twins who had lung cancer that ran in the family. Now, one twin, of course, was lazy and didn't do anything, but the other one worked out routinely. Now, the other twin wasn't doing anything. He died pretty early on. I think he lived to be about 55 or something, and lung cancer actually was what got him. But the person who was exercising, he lived and died without it, and he lived a much longer time. I think it was like somewhere between 75 and 80, something like that. And if you look at the graph, if he had lived longer than that, he would have gotten lung cancer maybe in his 90s, like the late 90s. So exercise can save off a lot of stuff. Exercise is a huge thing. The second thing is just staying hydrated. A lot of people hate the taste of water, but there's many ways you can make water taste good. For example, one of my favorite things to put in my water is like orange slices and mint. Together, that's a refreshing and sweet taste. I can't find anything that tastes as good as that one does. So drink a lot of water, keep hydrated, make sure you're exercising. And then, of course, one step at a time, edit your diet. Now, I can go into all kinds of stuff about that, but those are really the big things. It's just one step at a time. That's a lot of stuff I threw at you, and there's even more that goes into it than just that, plus other things. But those are the three things people hear about the most, and the only way that somebody can be successful with that is not out of fear of, having complications or something later. It's out of just pure enjoyment, knowing that you can do it and taking steps and enjoying each step that you take. It's all about mindset at the end of the day. If your mind isn't right, it doesn't matter what I tell you to do. It's not going to work because you're not going to use it.
All right. I know you mentioned that your parents were very, very strict. And I know, like, at that time, in that time period, they would have been because, hey, my baby is diagnosed with diabetes, and I got to find out this information. She can't have this. She can't do that. How are they now, knowing that you have taken a positive outlook and your mindset has changed in reference to the type of diabetes, the type of diabetes that you have? How are they
always
now?
Proud? Always proud, because for sure I take good care of myself and probably have surpassed most people's expectations just having it. Most people assume that bad things will happen to you just because you have diabetes in the future. But like I said, I've seen many living examples, and we can even look in the textbooks to find many long living examples where that wasn't the case. A lot of people are focused so much on the complications, it stops them from realizing there's a very positive chance for you to have a good, long, and healthy life as much as possible for you as a person and what your body can handle. It can happen, but you have to believe that it can happen, and you have to look at those facts. Don't let yourself be cut down by fear. That's what happens to a lot of us. And that's why some people just give up the fight way too early.
Yeah, that is so, so true. And then it puts a burden on their family or their caretakers because of their mindset.
Just when they care, everyone else does too.
Yeah, exactly. Gestational diabetes, does that have an effect on the baby afterwards? Will they develop it? Well, I know like some mothers develop gestational diabetes when they're pregnant.
Now this is not necessarily my topic of specialty, but for the most part, yes, those who are diabetic, who have diabetes and are also carrying children, the child can be affected. For example, all that sugar that runs around in the blood, if it's not controlled well enough, the child could come out really, really big. They might have a lot more weight on them than they should. And if it runs in the family, then yes, there is a chance that the child will later on develop diabetes as well. And then for the mothers, some people have gotten gestational diabetes only when it was all over and the child was born. They actually were diagnosed later with type 2. So if it runs in the family, that could be a sign of something as well. That's not my topic of specialty, but yes, it can actually affect the child.
Okay. I'm just wondering, how could that affect the child as well? I have learned so much tonight about this. Tell us more about Diabetes Elite.
Okay, so the Diabetes Elite is a company that I created specifically just to help other diabetics. Now, when I first got started, I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do. I really just wanted to help diabetics. I discovered that that was the thing that I was extremely passionate about. So I started out trying to help people learn what you can do about diabetes, like what I was telling you earlier, diet, exercise, etc. But what I found out as I continued to try to help people there wasn't that wasn't really the problem. It's not that people don't know what to do, it's just that they don't want to do it. So that's when it really started shifting into becoming a coaching business. And so now what I do is, my main thing right now is helping people with mindset coaching. So I coach them to have the right type of mindset so that they can go out there and live their lives the way that they were meant to, not the way that they think they're supposed to based on what people in the world are telling them. So that's my big thing. I'm a huge mindset coach. Everything else is done on the side. Like, I don't specialize in just exercise or just food. I teach all that stuff as the person needs me when I come to help them. The biggest thing is that mindset, because if that's not right, nothing else is going to work. And that I can guarantee you.
Exactly. And you know, in reading, I know, like, a lot of times in certain neighborhoods, they don't have access to healthy foods to purchase. Do you aid them in, say, for instance, they're diagnosed with type 1 or type 2 diabetes, and they don't have access to certain healthier foods? How do you assist them with that?
I haven't actually run into that situation yet, but one thing I love to do myself is actually gardening. So seeds are inexpensive. The thing is, you have to learn how to take care of those plants. So, like, you can grow your own carrots, green beans, things like that, and keep your own garden, but you have to be really dedicated to doing it. So someone in that particular situation, again, it all comes back down to mindset. Do they care enough to really put in the work so that they can have the food that they need? Because there are options. You can even, depending on their situation, if they can get a hold of the internet, they can actually order things. They can do that. But it just depends on that person's situation and what they're really committed to doing. There are ways around the situation. If you're just thinking that this is it, there's nothing else that I can do, then that is not the kind of mindset that's going to help you live a healthy life with diabetes. That's for sure. Somebody who really wants to make it happen, they'll make it happen.
So, in your study and studying, is it more prevalent, is diabetes more prevalent in males or females in the African American community, or is it just like 50-50?
Now, that I'm not entirely sure about. That's a question to definitely look into later. I just know that in general, not even just diabetes, African Americans are predisposed to a lot of stuff, and that's just the way that our genes are made. It doesn't really have anything to do with anything else. So heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, those kind of things, we are predisposed more than other races. That's the general understanding of it.
Okay. So, do you have any brothers and sisters?
I do. I have 2 brothers.
You do. So they are predisposed, like they don't have diabetes or anything?
No, they don't. Actually, in my immediate family, I'm the only one who is diabetic, but there's other people throughout my family that have it as well. Like, I have uncles who also have the same type of diabetes. We both do pretty well, no complications or anything of the sort. But again, that's because we care, we have the right mindset, and we try to continue to make sure we find out as much as we can to keep ourselves up.
Right. Wow. So growing up, were you able to talk to your friends about your diabetes?
When I was growing up, I didn't care very much. I've always been unusual, so I really didn't care when I had to take my blood sugar in public. People would be talking, they'll see me do it, they'll get quiet, they'll watch, they'll ask questions. I didn't hesitate to answer the questions. A lot of people think once they're diagnosed with diabetes, they have to hide and blend in as much as possible. But my thing is, when I was growing up, I didn't do that, and I grew into a really strong person, I'd like to say. So if somebody constantly lives their lives like that, they're denying themselves of just being themselves. I mean, diabetes is a part of them. So if they're ready to hide that, how many other parts of themselves are they hiding from the world? That doesn't seem like a very good life to me. And when I was growing up, like, again, I didn't care in the beginning because I was 5, but when I got to middle school and high school, I kind of also struggled with that problem. But again, I was always weird, so I really didn't care. It was just a part of me. It had always been. And so when I had that nervousness, I just kept doing what I was doing, and no one judged me for that. A lot of people thought I was like the strongest person in the world. I was like, I just do what I do. I don't really know what's so amazing about it, but as I got older, I kind of see what they meant. It's just you have to understand yourself and not be afraid to be yourself. A lot of people are very afraid to do that, especially with diabetes. I'm not afraid to do that, and I never really have been. Now, if you don't know yourself, that's a big problem, too. If you have an identity crisis going on, maybe you've never really paid yourself any attention, you maybe put other people first. When it comes to diabetes, then you're going to have a really tough time because you don't realize or you don't pay enough attention towards the fact that you need some care, and you have to put that first sometimes so that you can be there for everybody else. Again, that's a mindset process. People hide that kind of thing because they aren't used to seeing it for what it really is. They'll slap labels on it. They'll feel like it's more than it really is in the eyes of other people. It's called the spotlight syndrome. When you think everybody's really watching you, but they aren't, you just feel like it's this big thing that needs to be hidden, but that's not really it. You're not allowing yourself to grow as a person when you hide things like that, especially diabetes. Because, again, it's a part of you. It's not all of you.
Right. It's a part of you. And no, you're not weird. You just, God, he made us all different. So, you're not weird. And what it was strength in knowing who you are. Okay, this is who I am. This is just a part of me. You say weird. I don't look at it as being weird.
And I say weird too, but a lot of people told me the same thing growing up. What do you mean? That's just the word I have for it. I don't really mind using it, but hey.
No, it's not weird. Just this one medical condition that I have, and I'm living through it. I've lived through it. I'm thriving. I'm managing it. What media outlets can the listeners find you on?
The biggest one right now is Facebook, and I had Instagrams and things like that, but I realized when it came to Facebook, like I said, I love coaching people, and coaching is more like you talking to people, actually conversating with them, getting to know them. The best place to do that, honestly, is Facebook, not Instagram. Facebook is a place where you can have long conversation with somebody you've never really met, or people can reach out to you comfortably or find all of your stuff and you're not too embarrassed about it or anything like that. Facebook is just a place where you can just be you, which is what I love about it. So when I get in contact with somebody or somebody gets in contact with me, it's very easy for us to talk, and I can share as many things as I've learned with them as I want to, and they can listen to as much as they want, and it's a completely free place. So with Facebook.com is the biggest thing that I have right now. Now, on that page, I'm also in the process of building a website. It's just taking a little longer than I thought, but once it's done and it's completed, that announcement will actually be on Facebook. So for sure, if you want to find me, just go to Facebook.com, look up Alexis Gray Diabetes, or you can just go to Google and type in Alexis Gray Diabetes and then Facebook, and I'll be the first thing that pops up for sure. So it'll be very easy to send me a friend request and then take a look at all my stuff and wait for that announcement. Because once the website comes out, that's where a lot of those tools that I have been sharing with people there will be. There will be a lot of articles that you can read. Again, that free book that I have, opportunities to come work with me if you want to be a client, or just work with me, coach to person, see if I can help you out. You can also just talk to me. That's what Messenger is for. Again, that's why I love Facebook. There's so many options.
Okay. Will anybody be able to reach you via email, or you just prefer Facebook?
I prefer Facebook, and that's also because a lot of people, if you send me your email, for example, then you've released some personal information, but if you're not too comfortable with doing that, that kind of puts you on the spot. Facebook protects you. You can just send me a message, and if you don't like messaging me, then you can stop there. I don't have any of your personal information or anything.
Okay.
It's a very comfortable place.
Well, listeners, okay. Well, you can find my guest tonight, Alexis Gray, on Facebook, which is an outstanding platform, and it's not always negative, people. Facebook is out there for lots of really, really great information, avenues to take, different things for our life. Diabetes was our topic tonight, and I thank you, Alexis, for coming on and speaking with us about your type 1 brittle type 1 diabetes and how you're maintaining your A1C, graduating college, loving it, and coaching, your passion. I hear the passion in your voice for coaching so that we can become better at maintaining our diabetes. We can live a full life of diabetes. It's all about that mindset. It's the mindset. Once again, it is the mindset. It's our mindset. You can find my guest.
That's always the first step.
Is the mindset. You can find my guest, Alexis Gray, tonight on Facebook. And as usual, before I always close out, I'm always ending with a prayer. Our closing prayer tonight is, as we close this podcast on tonight, oh God, we ask that you walk with us everywhere we go. Help us to keep your word in our hearts that we may not sin against you. Through Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I thank you once again, Jerry Royce, Worldwide Christian Media, XXI Christian Media family, for the platform. Thank you, Alexis, for coming on tonight and enlightening us and encouraging us to take care of ourselves when we get diagnosed with diabetes. That is not a death sentence. It is a life sentence, a life mindset sentence to change, and more change. Thank you for tuning in to Pearls with Veronica, episode 22. Thank you and good night. Good night.
Do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. Brothers and sisters, we do not want you to be uninformed about those who sleep in death, so that you do not grieve like the rest of mankind who have no hope. For we believe that Jesus died and rose again, and so we believe that God will bring with Jesus those who have fallen asleep in him. According to the Lord's word, we tell you that we who are still alive, who are left until the coming of the Lord, will certainly not perceive those who have fallen asleep. For the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a loud command, with the voice of the archangels, and with the trumpet call of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. After that, we who are still alive and are left will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so we will be with the Lord forever. Therefore, encourage one another with these words. Thank you for joining us, Pearls with Veronica. Thank you for tuning us on Tuesday night at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Join us and share the file. I'm Jerry Rose Live Worldwide, and welcome to Positive Power, XXI Christian Media.